Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our GTAC session here, Embracing the Digital Momentum to Supercharge the Customer Service Experience. So with me today, I have two industry experts. We have Danielle Kovac and Margaret Suji. They're co-founders from Leap to Digital, and they will share how to create that amazing digital customer experience. And, they're known for leading with heart, humanity, empathy. So I am going to get out of the way, turn it over to these two guys, and enjoy the session. And feel free to go into the chat, ask your questions. They're happy to serve, happy to answer. And, just in case we run out of time, feel free to look them up on LinkedIn, connect with them, and ask away. So I turn it over to you, Margaret, Danielle, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Margaret and I are super excited to join the GTAC community today, and thank you for the invitation. We're really looking forward to having a conversation around how the pandemic has evolved customer service. And we've seen this huge digital momentum, and many brands are really harnessing this digital adoption that's happening with our employees and customers to really elevate or supercharge their customer service experience. And so, as Sangeeta shared, I'm Danielle Kovac, and I'm joined by my partner, Margaret Suji. We're the co-founders of Leap to Digital, and we help organizations create a digital customer service experience and really optimize and grow theirs. But during the pandemic, the first year of the pandemic, Margaret and I, like many of you, were working supporting frontline teams. And as you know, there was no playbook. And when the pandemic initially started, with lockdowns and closures and all these new restrictions introduced, we really needed to pivot quickly. We needed to really figure out how to best support our employees and how to support our customers. And so that led to new tactics and new technology, optimizing websites and app and so on at record speed. And so we're going to share a little bit about that with you today and encourage you to ask questions, contribute to the conversation. We'll keep an eye on the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So to get us started, we're going to look externally. We're going to look about 10,000 feet up view. And this acceleration really cultivated some new customer behaviors and new behaviors within ourselves. And there's some statistics we have there in front of you. But when we look at that, there's really three key areas for us that we want to highlight around how the pandemic has really had an impact on accelerating digital adoption and customer service. The first area is around this speed of transformation. There was this incredible acceleration of organization roadmaps from years to days and weeks. And if you think about things like moving an entire workforce home, these were things that we thought would take an organization many years, a multi-year plan to get there. And it was quite incredible to sit back and realize just what we were capable of doing so quickly. And McKinsey shares here how we've been able to cover a decade in adoption in a mere days. The second area for us that really stands out is around this introduction of new channels of support for customers, how brands really optimize their existing digital experiences. They improve their website, their mobile experiences. They may have introduced a new channel of support like live chat, or shifted from Facebook being a marketing-driven, content-based tool to full customer service support. And what that really did was created this huge shift in customers willing to try out digital conversations. And so Forrester talks about an increase in digital interactions around 40%. And McKinsey talks about we're likely to continue to see this 3 times likely or higher interactions of customers happening digitally. So it's quite remarkable to see what's happening here. And then the third area underpinning sort of all of this is how so much emphasis is being placed on customer service and how customers feel when they're engaging with organizations and brands. And customer service is important to all of us. We all have experiences where we've had an okay customer service experience and we've been sort of tolerant of it. But with these new digital experiences for customers and with the pandemic, what we're seeing is higher elevated customer expectations. More customers are demanding exceptional service. And if they don't see that happening for them, then they're willing to no longer engage with the brand. So now that we've talked about sort of globally what's happened around this exciting digital transformation, when we look at how it has influenced customer service, this is probably not surprising to many of you in terms of what you experienced yourself and how you support teams and you yourself as a customer. You know, the first area that I'll talk about is the remote workforce. We needed to quickly move our employees home in many instances, or a large portion of our workforce home. And so what we saw with that is this new dependency on tools and remote capabilities, digital experiences for our frontline teams, really challenged things like traditional coaching. As an employee, when I had a question, I couldn't just raise my hand, I couldn't turn and ask my neighbor for support. I needed to take advantage of technology and digital practices to reach out and be supported. We saw the emergence of new business models like curbside pickup and contactless delivery. You know, there was a time where we couldn't enjoy walking into a mall or a retail store with the stores being closed. And so businesses really needed to creatively pivot and find new ways for supporting their customers. Models like curbside pickup, you still see even now, you know, 2 years into the pandemic, many customers still continuing to take advantage of that way of support. Lockdowns and work from home were not just about us or our customers, our workforce. It was also about our customers working from home in many instances, or being supported through online school and so on. And so what we really saw was more time in front of technology, more time in front of your screen, and the more time using social platforms. You know, I don't know about most of you. I certainly had many video cocktail calls or dinners by video call with my friends and my family. In addition to became an avid online shopper as one way of me to continue to get support. And the more time we spent online experiencing this, the more we saw customers get comfortable with engaging and reaching out to organizations and customer service teams for help in those same channels. This working from home and increased screen time also led to really high demand for online experiences as customers. And not only have customers been open and willing to explore, they're now starting to demand a higher level of support in these online experiences. New digital technology, we talked a little bit about on the earlier slide. This is where we really saw a lot of organizations either introduce new digital experiences, maybe they launched live chat as a new channel of support, maybe they shifted their Facebook platform and messaging support from marketing to customer care. We saw apps launched from businesses. We saw websites optimized, launched virtual assistants to help with support. So these new digital technology platforms, again, being introduced to really help elevate and support your customers through the pandemic. And underpinning all of these, never before has there been such a critical need for organizations to show compassion and be empathetic and really place human connection at the core of the experience. We saw so many amazing examples of how that translated with brands making changes to things like customer policies and procedures, giving more time for customers to make payments and so on, in recognition of what was happening. And you know, this is a time that the pandemic has affected all of us. You know, some people lost their jobs, some people lost loved ones, some people were sick. And so it was really, really critical for us as human beings to really translate compassion and empathy into all of our customer service experiences. So when you look at the impact that we've seen on digital customer service and customers' willingness to start and reach out in new and different ways, it was really quite exciting to see this survey done by Twilio. And what this shows us is customers' willingness during COVID to try a new digital channel for the first time. We know how popular phone support is. We know that we've seen many customers have a comfort in picking up the phone and reaching out for help. So it was quite exciting for us to really see, as new technology and ways of support were introduced, there was a willingness on the part of customers to take advantage of this. And so when you look at live chat at 35%, higher than some other ways of support that we've seen customers quite comfortable with, this is really telling us that there's an openness to try new ways of getting help. And what was really interesting for us to see when you look at some of these digital support options is these are ways for customers to engage in a convenient way for them. It allows them to be in front of their screen. They could be working, multitasking. They could have multiple screens up in front of them, really allowing them to search for help, get help in a way that doesn't require them leaving necessarily what they're doing at that time. And one other thing that I find really interesting about this is the comfort and willingness to try being supported by a virtual assistant. And we've started to see how virtual assistants are being refined and getting better and better. And so for customers to feel confidence in reaching out for support, a virtual assistant chatbot really providing that support outside of traditional hour support. So although your frontline teams might be not there to help your customer, it's a way to still make sure that they realize that the brand is still there, ready to help them. So we've talked about globally what's happening and the impact to customer service in some key areas. Now let's take a look at where we find ourselves today in our customer service ecosystem. For us, we look at service being supported in two different ways. Your first pillar of support are these assisted support experiences powered by people. These are the experiences powered by our employees, by our teams. And so you can see the many ways that customers can reach out for help and support, whether it's a phone call or an IVR, live chat support, video support, messaging, social, and so on. And then we see this other support for customers really powered by themselves, leveraging self-serve capabilities, whether it's FAQs on a website or a virtual assistant, whether they take advantage of using a community forum and asking a peer or another customer for help and support. But what this really shows us, though, is that there's so many ways the customer can get help, and it can be really complicated. And so what's important for us to think about as organizations and for our employees is how do we set our employees and customers up for success? How do we ensure that there is a true integration of these channels so that it's easy for our customers? They understand which channel they should reach out to for help. And if something doesn't go well with that experience, it's quite easy for them to be pointed to the right place to have their question answered or their account change done, and so on. And when you think about your employees at the core of this, thinking about how you are equipping your team so that your employees can help support your customer through these different touch points that we offer. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Margaret, and she's going to share with us 7 customer service trends that we've seen surface through the pandemic that are not going away. Margaret, over to you.
Thanks, Danielle. Hi, everybody. Margaret Suji here. Really pleased to be here today. Just a reminder, throw your questions in the chat. I want to make this as conversational as possible. We'll have time at the end as well. So if we just flip to the next slide, there were 7 things that bubbled up during the pandemic that we think are really here to stay. The first is, as Danielle mentioned, empathy and human connections. And, sometimes I think about I think many of you have probably heard the term the Great Resignation, and I like to call it the Great Reevaluation. We had so much time to experience a very unique pandemic, and it's universally experienced by all. A lot of time in our homes with our families, with our loved ones, or by ourselves. And it's a time to reassess and realize, okay, what I'm really missing now is that really deep human connection, that empathetic conversation. And there's some interesting stats around this in that 68% of customers say that a pleasant experience with an agent is fundamental to a positive experience, versus 62% of customers say that the agent's knowledge and resourcefulness was the most important factor. So even surveys and data are telling us that customers are valuing how did that make me feel? What did that feel like? Did that feel good for me? And if it did, as a customer, I'm willing to talk about your business. I'm willing to spend more with your business. I'm willing to stay with your business. Again, because I feel connected to that brand through that agent. The second thing there is all about new support channels. And we saw a whole bunch of new channels take off during COVID. Some of them may have been like already kind of bubbling to the surface before. If you think about messaging as an example, so messaging before the pandemic was 5th in terms of customer service channel usage, and now it is 2nd in popularity. And organizations have really started to embrace new channels to meet their customers where they are. And that ties into number 3, which is always on. Again, as Danielle mentioned, we had a lot of screen time during the pandemic. We had a lot of time to be online for various reasons, work and personal. And what that meant was that we were also online for customer service, and we were also online at all different hours of the day. And so what we may have seen as traditional traffic patterns was probably a little different during COVID. And that's created this always on mentality. And so whether that is customers getting help through a self-serve channel, whether that's customers using an FAQ, whether that's customers interacting with AI, or even a live agent at all hours of the day. Again, it's all about meeting the customers when, where, and how they want. Number 4 is all about omnichannel. So we talked about omnichannel. We heard about omnichannel well before COVID. And I want to be really clear here that multiple channels does not mean you have an omnichannel experience. And so you can have your traditional phone channel, you could have an email channel, you could have a social channel, live chat, SMS, you could have a community forums. And if they're not all stitched together in the back end, dependent on technology, of course, if they're not all stitched together in the back end, offering a seamless, effortless customer experience, that's not omnichannel. And so customers are looking for that single front door that they can go in and they can choose however they want to interact, whether it's on my mobile device, whether it's on my desktop, whether I'm picking up a landline. And as a customer, I know I'm going to be treated the same. I'm not repeating my story. I'm not repeating my history. They want that seamless, effortless experience to be delivered to them. Number 5, again, Danielle mentioned virtual assistants. What we're seeing interestingly here is not just that customers are also willing to deal with a robot. I mean, imagine 5 years ago was probably very unheard of, and now it's so much more popular. You can think of all the biggest brands, and many of them will, before you get to interact with a human being, you deal with an AI interface first. Now what we're seeing as well is AI for employees. So think about you're an employee handling a conversation or a call, and you can leverage a virtual assistant to help you look up information in a knowledge base, find a part as an example, speed up authentication processes with your customers. And so it's actually this sort of coupling of the human experience with your agent, and your agent being able to lean on a virtual assistant to make that conversation even more efficient. Video customer service has taken off in popularity. We hear a lot of people asking about this as well. And if you think back to the very early days of the pandemic when we were locked in, locked down, video was the way we connected. Like, whoever thought we could have a conference online like this? Whoever thought we were going to a doctor's appointment? I can tell you my GP has told me flat out she never thought she was going to be doing video calls with her patients. It's so much more acceptable now. We hear about religious communities getting together on video calls, and kids went to school on video. And so there's this familiarity with video as a channel, and now it's also migrating into the customer service field. So if you have a repair that you need to conduct and you need to show the agent the part, the technical support agent the part of what you're trying to fit together. Let's say you have a set of blinds that you're trying to repair with the part that they've sent you. What's the easiest way to have that conversation? On a video call. And number 7 is all about your employees. Employees are customers, employees are savvy. Everybody's gotten a lot savvier lately. And this one's all about making sure that employees are supported to be able to be that tour guide, that introductory greeter to your customers in a digital channel. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple of slides. Next slide. So this slide here, lots of logos, lots of brands. And the purpose of this is really to share that digital customer service has changed across industry. There isn't a single industry that we've seen that hasn't been either dabbling their toes or supercharging their current digital experience, whether that's legacy organizations like higher education, utilities, financial services, insurance, travel, hospitality, retail, obviously, and on and on. There isn't a single industry that has been untouched. And they've either started a brand new live chat experience, they have augmented an experience with a digital assistant, they've opened up a community forums when they didn't have one before. And I'll share two stories here. One of Farmers Insurance, so insurance company in the US, previously had a phone channel and they had an email channel. And during COVID, they opened up a text messaging channel. Kind of a new thing for an insurance company. So imagine being able to text in questions about your policy, questions about a renewal, questions about a claim, and you do that on a device that you're super familiar with because we're all on our phones all day. You do it through a channel that you're super familiar with because you're texting with people all day. And now you can pivot and make that into a customer service channel. And what Farmers Insurance saw was a huge uptick in CSAT. Because the customers found that this was just a much more convenient channel for them to ask a question, go on about their day, come back, get an answer, and then continue that conversation on their terms. And the other story that we have here is with Galeries Lafayette. So if you've all been to Paris, and I'm sure we can all go soon, if you've been to Paris and visited the very famous department stores there, Galeries Lafayette offers a personal shopping service, which unfortunately was not available during the lockdown and those very intense periods of COVID. But what they pivoted to instead was WhatsApp. And so their personal shoppers would contact customers through WhatsApp. They would have a messaging conversation and a video conversation available. And so now you, in addition to the, let's call it typical e-commerce online shopping experience, you have a very personalized experience utilizing a very modern channel. Next slide, please. So this slide here is all about some ways that you can get started. And we wanted to really focus on, as customer service practitioners, what are the things that we can control? What are the things that we have agency in? And it's not just about technology. So yes, digital definitely is underpinned by technology. Omnichannel is dependent on technology, but that's not the only thing that you need to consider. And that's not the only thing that you need to focus on. And so here, 5 areas, we'll call them 5 themes in which we feel that there's a lot of space where you can start planting those seeds to get your teams ready to offer a digital customer service experience. And the first one actually starts in recruiting. So if you think about today, if you're recruiting for a traditional telephone agent, what else do you want to be looking for? What other skills do you want to include? What other items in the job requirement do you need to post? And this would be leaning on your HR teams to help you with that job analysis. Because if you've got this great traditional call center team, how can you also leverage them when you decide to go into digital? It's not always about hiring a brand new workforce, because if you start now, hiring for people who will have the skills or who have the ability to develop those skills, you can definitely leverage them when you get into a digital customer service channel. The second piece is all about empathetic conversational training. And so this is more than, I'll call it the typical 101 customer service training. This is about tying in your brand tone of voice into training and helping your agents have that very empathetic, highly conversational, extremely connected conversation in the channel that they're operating in today. And so that when they're ready and when you're ready to offer a digital customer service channel, it's just a quick pivot because it's second nature. And one thing here about brand tone of voice, every brand has a voice, every brand has a sound. And in digital customer service training, we would always talk about what does that sound like, but it's not something that we'd always talk about in the phone channel. And so that's something you could actually weave into your phone agents training, so that they, again, have those skills to be able to support those customers in a very connected way. Building digital acumen for employees, and I mentioned this a couple of slides ago. So imagine your customer today has a question about self-serve. Imagine your customer wants to do something themselves but doesn't know how. Imagine your customer has a question about, oh, I see you have a bot. Can you tell me more about it? Your employees also need to know how to handle those conversations confidently. They may, some of your more digitally savvy employees may be able to do that on the fly, and that just comes naturally to them. But making sure that your workforce is skilled and equipped to be able to handle those conversations and introduce your customers as well to all of the new digital options that you're offering as an organization. Over on the left-hand side of the slide, we talk about support programs, because today in your operations, you have support programs, for example, like QA. And that may be QA for a very traditional channel, like phone channel. And that's not something that you can just take and replicate onto a digital channel. It really is now thinking about, okay, if I want to be in the digital space in the next 6 to 12 months, or even further than that, what programs do I have today in my traditional channels? What do I need to do to expand those programs and optimize them in a digital channel? And the last piece here is all about the conversation flow. And so again, in whatever channels you're offering, there's conversation flows that exist today. And how do you take those conversation flows and upgrade them to include empathy? And so even if it is the phone channel, once you have an empathetic conversation, once you've developed that muscle for empathetic conversations, it becomes second nature. And it doesn't matter if you're having a conversation like this or if you're having a conversation on the keyboard. It's the language that you use and the cues that you want to pick up on with the customer to be able to deliver that kind of a conversation. I'm going to flip to the last slide here. And that's it for the official content. So I want to open it up to questions, comments, anything from the audience. If you want to put it in the chat, we can take a look. And I think we also have the option to be able to take you off mute if you'd like, if you want to ask that as well. So feel free to just pop it in the chat if you do have a question.
Looks like it's a quiet group today.
A quiet group.
They're listening and learning.
Well, I have a question for the group, if everyone's open to it. Oh, we do have a question here. Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to read this one out loud from Anu. What are some good questions to ask during an interview to assess empathy skills? Ooh, that's a good one. We've actually been talking to some people all about recruiting when it comes to empathy and setting that person up for the next kind of channel. Danielle, did you want to touch on that?
Sure.
We were talking about that earlier.
So when we're thinking about the digital customer service experience, what's really interesting for us is to, from a recruitment perspective, identify if the potential candidate is able to really translate empathy into that written format. And so when you do a face-to-face interview or a video interview, they may be very comfortable role-playing and demonstrating empathy through their body language, through showing care and concern, through their tone of voice, and so on. No different than us on this call today, but that doesn't always translate into what gets typed on the keyboard. And so it's really about testing employees to recognize and understand that they can leverage the right language in their responses to customers. So in the digital world, we just encourage people to take it a little bit further. When the customer can't hear that care in your voice, we need to use our language. Our words are what we have to convey emotion in that interaction. And so from a recruitment perspective, we would suggest looking for things like testing conversational capabilities to really identify the ability that a candidate may have in demonstrating care and concern, compassion and empathy into their written context that they would have with the customer.
And I think to just tag on to that as well, One of the things that we also see customers doing is they tell us things. They give us clues, they give us cues. I'm thinking back to a conversation that I just evaluated about a customer explaining why he can't stay on hold and why he has difficulty calling in and why he's chosen a certain channel because he works in a hospital. And so he's a doctor in a public hospital, and he's given us information, personal information that, as an agent, how do I pick up on that personal information? It's not just that he can't be on hold and he hasn't been able to resolve his concern. It's what has he given us, and how can I respond to make that connection, to show that I'm listening, even if it comes in on an email or a live chat or a social media conversation. It shouldn't matter that I can't hear the voice. It's all about, okay, what did he tell us, and how can I acknowledge that cue? I see another question here, and it says, in the aspect of the Great Resignation and the lack of employees, how do you manage the omni-channel group when you can't even meet your service level in your main channel? Well, that's a good question.
I think it's an excellent question, and sometimes what we've seen organizations do is turn on a new channel when they're not ready. Yes, customers are keen on being supported in new digital ways, but if you turn on a new experience and as an organization, you don't have the employees behind it to help support that experience, that may actually turn your customer off. So if they try reaching out through, let's say, live chat, and they have a very long wait time, that may encourage that customer to not try again and try a different channel, or one that they're accustomed to, like picking up the phone. So we always say, when building out your plan and your roadmap, that your workforce is a critical component, making sure that you have the right processes in place, you have the right people in place to really help support the overall experience. There are natural benefits of some channels of support that we want to make sure that organizations tap into. So certainly expanding your self-serve capabilities. We're seeing more and more customers are willing to go and search information for themselves. I begin with a Google search almost 100% of the time. And so we're starting to see these new behaviors with customers, a willingness to spend time on your website, to look at an FAQ, review a video. And so certainly investing in some of those areas also helps not have a dependency on people necessarily. There's different creative ways that customers can get support themselves and on their own. So we would just encourage you not to turn everything on too quickly. If you're thinking about launching a new channel, there's different ways that you can ramp up. You can, from a live chat perspective, we see organizations that have chat available when people are available. We see different hours of support and so on. So there's some considerations there. The one benefit of your digital channel, for sure, though, is the ability to also support concurrent conversations or more than one customer at a time. And so from a live chat perspective, or text messaging, social media, you have the ability with your technology to move from one customer to another customer. And so sometimes that helps. When one customer is typing their response, we could be greeting another customer. And so linking back to the recruitment question, there's also an opportunity for you to consider, when you're hiring, that capability and proficiency with tools, and proficiency and comfort with navigating between multiple screens. That was a great question. Thank you for that.
I see another question here, and it's, what are your thoughts on multi-channel employee functionality? So for example, having employees provide service via calls and chats. Do you think that can be executed successfully?
This is a great question, Margaret. You and I hear this often, and we've seen this executed in different ways across organizations, from your sort of multifaceted customer service agent that spends a portion of their time online, on phone. Then they pivot to live chat support or email support. We do see a lot of phone and email support teams. We're also starting to see more growth and development, and something that Margaret and I were very familiar with in our in our previous corporate days is the creation of a digital care organization where you have employees that are very comfortable having conversations online with customers. They're proficient, they have speed, they're comfortable navigating with different tools, and they have the ability to really find the right words to connect emotionally with customers in forums like chat or email or text. And so we're now starting to see this shift in organizations bringing those teams together. I think there's recognition that your stellar customer service agent on the phone isn't necessarily always going to be equipped for that digital conversation. And it's not that you might not be able to get them there, but there's some investment that needs to happen. The skills that you have, the customer service skills that you have through voice don't always translate into written format. And so there are possibilities. It's just recognizing that you have the right people through testing and assessment and support, and also make sure that you're investing in providing and equipping them with those tools. What is complicated for employees, though, fundamentally, and we're always very focused on the employee experience, is at the core, you have an employee that needs to pivot. So if your technology is different, if your technology is not integrated, if you have one phone system different from your live chat tool, different from what you use for social media, different from what you use from email, it's just recognize behind that you have an employee that needs to navigate their way through that. So when you have everything connected in one platform, that's definitely an easier starting point for brands to consider having this hybrid approach.
And I would also add to that, one of the things that Danielle and I have seen recently is this interesting combination of a voice and social agent. And one of the things we'd always recommend is that yes to the technology absolutely being there to underpin that employee experience, but also it's more from a workforce planning perspective to allow that employee to focus on one of those channels, especially if it's using different technology for a set period of time, and preferably not like less than an hour, and preferably in chunks of multiple hours. So let's say it's a half a day in social in this case, and a half a day on the phones, or 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. But I'd say longer chunks of time in those specific channels if you wanted to blend the two team or the two types of work together.
And I think just to think through the impacts on your customer service frontline team. So if they have different measures of success and different dashboards and different key metrics that you look at as indicators of their performance, it's really important if they're supporting different functional areas that looks very familiar and consistent for them. Again, focusing it on the employee experience. Great questions.
Any other questions? I was just about to say before all the questions got posted, and I do have a question for the audience. So if everybody, and happy to take more, but I'll if you'll indulge me, I'm curious if you want to type it into the chat. What digital customer experiences did you try for the first time in the last 2 years during the pandemic? Oh, video doctor. Yep. That was a big one, for sure. I loved the ability to, I really appreciated the ability to not have to be waiting in a waiting room, especially when taking my kids to see the doctor. That was extremely convenient. I never thought I'd quite experience that. Anybody else try anything else?
I know we also joked, Margaret, about how I know my doctor has never been so punctual before. Yeah. I loved the virtual support, knowing that it was that call when it was coming through at the right time, and so that was fantastic.
I have a second question, if the audience will indulge me again. What are, maybe if you have one or two, what are some notable brands that are delivering great digital customer service experiences and great digital customer service in general? I've heard of a few. Amazon, awesome. I've heard of a few. I'll just spit them out from some colleagues in the US. Uber is a big one. Again, that very seamless experience, whether and not really mattering what country I'm in, not having to be dependent on, you know, crazy things like cash, just being able to make a payment on my app on the phone that I'm always using. The other one that I've heard of is also USAA, another financial institution in the US. I hear Instacart. Yep, I would say Instacart got really popular really fast over the last 2 years. Oh yes, a comment here that hating that Google removed the way to talk to someone live is only chat or email. Interesting. And Daniel, I'm assuming there that you mean that that you used to be able to talk to somebody like live on a phone call essentially through Google. Cool. Yeah, sometimes it is, you know, and that's why we say even like that's why we see the proliferance of video chat in that sometimes you need that live conversation. Like not everything can happen on digital. Any other brands that anybody has a comment about?
I'm gonna pop in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good insights. Anybody else before we wrap up? Because you guys gave very concise information. And I think the people who attend this kind of session are there to soak it in, and they're in the learning and gathering mode. So I know I was engrossed in listening. So if there's anyone else, or did you have any finishing words, Margaret or Danielle?
No, this is it. Thank you so much. You know, we always joke, we always love talking shop with other practitioners. It's such a fun thing for us to do. And I hope everybody learned something. I think Sangeeta, the slides will be available as resources. If anybody wants to share with their teams, by all means, we're leaving the slides with GTAX so that you can keep spreading the word.
Yeah, absolutely. And then feel free to connect with the ladies on LinkedIn. So that you have Danielle Kovac and Margaret Suji, and their company is Leap to Digital. And just if you want to mark your calendars, on April 28th at 2 p.m., we're going to have Gary York from 311 sharing his story of all that he did with Salesforce, him and his team. And so it'll be a very interesting case study. The details will be going out probably in the next week. So on that note, we'll end today. And the recording, you should probably get it early next week, probably on Monday. All right.
Excellent.
So take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.